You're listening to Forward Faster, bite-sized insights for entrepreneurs.
Hi, and welcome to the Forward Faster podcast. My name is Damon Diehl, and I am the Technology Program Manager for NextCore Luminate. Luminate is the first accelerator for startups and optics and photonics companies that are working with those as a basis of the technology. With me today is Nick Brown, and he is the Director of Engineering at OVITZ. And OVITZ is the company that in 2019 was the recipient of the $1 million of follow-on funding, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And what we're going to talk about today is their xwave technology, which is a method of looking at the higher order aberrations of the eye and how their technology is going to be changing the way that is treated. So before we get into anything else, could you say just what is OVITZ in the first place? Why did we give you $1 million?
So OVITZ is a company that's trying to correct people's higher order aberrations and give people much better vision correction and much more customized vision correction than they have right now. First of all, what is a higher order aberration? Higher order aberrations are any sort of optical irregularity in your eye that deviates from a spherical shape. So when eye doctors are correcting your vision right now, the only tools they really have available for correcting your vision are just spherical shapes. So just like a basketball kind of spherical shape, or a football that's actually just spheres. It's just a sphere in two different directions. So you kind of have like a really gradual direction and then a more steep direction. But this is pretty much all they've had for, decades and decades. These in reality, as you can imagine, eye corrections get a little bit more complicated than that, especially when we get into some of the diseases like keratoconus that I'm sure we'll start talking about later. You get these very complex shapes, and it's kind of like fitting a square peg in a round hole. Like you're just not going to be able to correct a very wavy shape with just a spherical shape. So those are higher order aberrations. And so what OVITZ does is we make a device that can measure these higher order aberrations, which have been around for a little while. But then we pair that and work with manufacturers so that we can actually make lenses that correct people's vision.
So I think actually, if you wanted to go ahead and say what keratoconus is right now, I think that's a really good concrete way for people to understand because it's such a visual.
Yes. So keratoconus is a ocular disease where the cornea ends up kind of taking on this cone shape. Normally the cornea is a nice sphere, and in keratoconus it kind of elongates downward. You sort of imagine like this cone shape that's going to be significantly affected by these higher order aberrations that are not quite spherically shaped. So if you try to correct it with a sphere, you're not going to get quite what you want.
I was surprised. It's actually more common than I thought because I have a friend who has keratoconus and I never knew it.
Yeah. I didn't know about it until about 3 years ago, and just in various people in my life. It's not really something you talk about because, you see, oh, I have crappy eyes. It's like, oh, what is that? What does that mean? You just have like myopia or, a little nearsighted. But yeah, I've found at least 2 or 3 people, like people on YouTube I was watching, they're just making some content and then they come out with some video, this like emotional video on like, oh, if you guys have noticed me squinting all the time, it's because I have this weird disease called keratoconus. And
so you guys don't make contact lenses though. So you have a different way that you're helping people with keratoconus and other higher order aberrations. So you're enabling this making of contact lenses. So I'm curious about that.
Right. Well, we're although we don't actually have the manufacturing facilities, we're pretty integral in the process of helping lens manufacturers understand how they can add these higher order aberration corrections on um, on their lenses. So yeah, it's really not as simple as, oh, I just send over, the scans and Jeff at wherever is going to know how to manufacture them. Like I typically go and spend extensive periods of time with the manufacturers that we work with to make sure that they can actually write the pattern, get that from our device. It doesn't. It has a lot of like asymmetry and very fine shapes, so you got to get the manufacturing devices all calibrated in, and then you have to test it too. So there's quite a bit that we do with the manufacturers to get them enabled on this technology, and I think that's a big thing that really the real value that we're adding, because there's other aberrometers that on the market that measure roughly what we measure, but connecting that with somebody you can actually, or allowing that actually to be written on a lens is the key.
Yeah, I can see what you mean, that the aberrations are complicated. And so actually, maybe people don't realize these are unique to every person, right? Yeah. So it's not like you order, your optometrist goes and says, okay, I'm going to get you a lens with this much spherical and this much astigmatism, and you pick it up on the way out.
Right.
This is customized for every single person.
Yeah, absolutely. We would love to have a higher aberration lens where, you just, correct, have some standard that'll just work for everybody. But yeah, it's not the case. So you get these very strange, arbitrary shapes, really. Everybody's a little bit different. There's a couple patterns, but no two patients are the same. So you have to be able to measure them very precisely, and you have to be able to manufacture very precisely. They use some pretty advanced like lathes that kind of oscillate and have all these high frequency, encoders and all of these things to try to get these lenses just right.
So I think you hit on this a little bit. What is it that the way people were trying to solve this before xwave, and I think that you've hit a little bit on how it's not simple, but how were people trying to treat these kind of higher order aberrations before you guys came along?
It depends on the application. For keratoconus, there's kind of this progression that occurs. So they'll start with just normal contact lenses, and that's kind of the fit the square peg in the round hole kind of thing. But they will still correct the normal sphere component, which is going to be good for probably a couple of years. As they progress, they'll fit something that's called a sclera lens, which is this very large lens that fits over the sclera, which is the white of your eye. So rather than sitting on your the color part of your eye, the cornea, iris area, it'll fit on the sclera instead. And so it kind of vaults over, and then it has this water bath. And it index matches. You can look up index of refraction matching on YouTube. There'd be a lot of cool videos there of how it basically can make things invisible. So what it does essentially is make the really wavy cornea invisible. And your new cornea or your new optic becomes the front of the sclera lens.
Those are used for movies a lot, right? Special effects.
Oh, yeah. So those are also like the cosmetic lenses that they
those creepy black eyes.
Yeah, because they're so big, they're literally like big enough to like fill your whole lid area. So yeah, they use those for, I think there was, I actually, it's probably just because Google's given me all the sclera lens results now, but yeah, there was like a big rush of a bunch of people doing Halloween stuff. And a bunch of risk of infection and all that.
Yeah, exactly. I got warned by my ophthalmologist that I shouldn't buy those things if they're not coming from an optometrist. they're
Yeah.
not necessarily safe.
Right. Well, they
Yeah.
go through I mean, it's probably fine for one night, but they also go for not medical advice. Um, uh, they go through a pretty extensive fitting process to get it perfect for your eye. Like when you get fitted for a sclera lens, you're usually going for 2, 3, 4 visits to make sure it gets just right.
But I've seen them sold online as like, here's your scleral lens for your Halloween costume. Going, I think that's a really bad idea.
Yeah.
So without me going off too far on that,
Yeah.
How do you guys even get started with this? You're an Institute of Optics grad, right?
Yeah.
And so is Felix Kim. We haven't mentioned him yet, the guy who founded the company. So how did you guys even get started among all the things you guys could be doing? Why did you pick this?
Yeah. So Felix Kim's CEO of the company, also the founder. And he started OVITZ basically, I don't know, the story is a little different every time I ask him, but there's this entrepreneurship class at U of R that we both took. We didn't take it at the same time. He took it a year before me, but the premise of the class is it wants to try to take you through a startup. So you have to like come up with this idea for the startup. And he's like, the day before class ended, he's like, oh crap, what am I going to start? And he's like searching through patents with the lab, the professor that he worked with, Gunyoon Yoon, at the time, and he found this patent for a portable or a compact wavefront sensor. And he is kind of like, oh, okay, well, maybe I can do something with that. Just, market portable wavefront sensor.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good, right? And so he went through the class with that. And by the end, he's like, well, after he did all the research, like, oh, maybe there's actually something here that we can do. And he just kind of continued with it. He got more and more students involved. So the original idea was just having a wavefront sensor that was portable. So we were in a much different direction where it was more about social outreach, really, or that was the best application of the device, because it was this very low cost portable device that could measure your eye prescription.
Yeah, that's a really interesting case of a pivot, right? You guys had a particular application, and then you found a different market for it, because that still exists, right? The social outreach thing. That's not that you guys are necessarily going to do it now, but that technology, long run, it could still go in that direction. So, what is it about the xwave that helped you guys make that transition? What's the problem it solves? What's the advantage that it has over other things?
I think the main point of the pivot was just getting the technology to the point where we felt confident that it could measure these high-rate aberrations really well. Mm-hmm. The portable device was really only measuring those spherical shapes that I talked about earlier. And we developed the technology to the point where we felt really confident that it was measuring these higher aberrations really accurately. And that's kind of where we started getting into like, well, what can we do with this that's different? We came up, we have the wavefront sensor, we had partnerships with manufacturers. And I think our the key thing that came in and were able to add to the market is just making that process much simpler for optometrists. You didn't have this, 10 different aberrometers trying to work with 10 different manufacturers. You just have one aberrometer with custom built software that's specifically made for you to be able to send your results to any of these different manufacturers. And that's a great service that we've been able to provide. And as a result of that, I feel like we've been the first ones that have been able to effectively get into actually correcting.
So that's actually part of your magic. You hit on this a little bit before, but it's that ability to turn the measurement into a prescription that's been missing. People could measure wavefronts, but they weren't doing this connection to turning that into actual manufacturing, right?
Exactly.
So you guys are happy with the way it's performing. you guys have now sent it out to some medical doctors, ophthalmologists. What do they think? It's like 15 people right now who are evaluating
Yeah,
it?
we're in a few dozen. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a couple people, and we're sort of the evaluation phase was kind of last year. This is the year we're really trying to push and get the product out there to like hundreds instead of dozens. But we have pretty good traction so far. It's the device is installed in a few dozen clinics. We've written a few hundred patients by now. So it's out there. It's been performing really well. So the main way you kind of evaluate vision is that eye chart that you read at the doctor's office, right? And each one of those lines is progressively smaller. So on average, the majority of our patients, whatever line they were at, they're able to read the line or even 2 lines below where they were at before. So yeah, we've been getting pretty significant benefits across a large number of patients. Yeah. 200.
I saw a video that you guys shared of a patient talking about the effectiveness of what you had, and he was kind of emotional, right? I mean, it had an enormous vision is so important, and it was life-changing for the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. That was kind of a something I almost had to get used to as I was getting into the company, because the things I work on, I like to be really passionate about them. And me personally, luckily I've had, no eye issues whatsoever. I never worn glasses. I'm always
I hate you.
person.
I hate you so much.
yeah. I'm always the person who I can see the little lettering away. Yeah. So it took me a while to realize, how much people are affected by this, especially people with keratoconus, or even, most people could be corrected by glasses, but, they can't even do that. They put on a pair of glasses and they're at the point where you're at without glasses. So yeah, it's amazingly important. My appreciation has grown more and more the more I've been with the company. Of just how many times I notice how lucky I am to have great vision. I wish I was able to see more reactions, or like the first time patient put on the lens. That's unfortunately on the business side something I don't get to see as much, but I try to.
Well, people make YouTube videos, so just watch the YouTube videos.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. So one thing I guess to kind of wrap things up is you guys received this $1 million investment from being in Luminate. And I'm curious to just know, what was the effect Luminate had on you? I worked with Felix a lot. And so how was the program in general? If you say before Luminate and then where you guys are, how did Luminate affect where you guys are?
We have a much nicer office now, that's for sure.
There you go.
the new Luminate, or the new NextCore facility is fantastic. But yeah, I think it for me personally, not necessarily the company, I think it sort of gave me like a tiny mini MBA as far as like my breadth in some of the topics that I was slightly more knowledgeable in. I had never, all of the classes on, HR, sales, those sorts of things. As somebody with an engineering background, I felt that really rounded me out a lot. So the program was fantastic from that point, and forcing us to do some of the eating of the vegetables, I'll say, instead of just focusing on the exciting technology, trying to lay some of the business foundation stuff and get some of the documents that we needed in order. As far as the money goes, that was completely game changing for us. I think we were, to be honest with you, is kind of one of those moments Elon Musk always talks about, where, if we didn't get any money from Luminate, that was probably it. We were only a few weeks away from our closing up shop at that point. So it was, went from, potentially zero to 100 with $1 million. We were able to.
You guys are literally the poster children for the program, literally, because they used the picture of Felix realizing that he won all over the place.
Yeah.
He was that was great to watch on stage.
That was like I put my hand on his back like while we were on stage, and like I almost burned it. He was so warm, like just from like shaking and the build up, and it was a great moment. It was fantastic. I was shaking too.
So where do you guys have been out of the program, gosh, almost 2 years now, right? It was 2019. So where do you guys see yourself in the future if you look like 5 years or 10 years from now?
I don't know about 10 years. That's a long time. that's more of a CEO question. But 5 years from now, we're hoping to look. So we've been talking a lot about keratoconus, but it turns out this is ultimately actually something that affects the average person. Almost everybody has a small amount of high-order aberrations, and if you're really trying to maximize your vision, then it becomes really critical to get these higher aberrations. Like a lot of people, the patient you were talking about, actually the one who got really emotional, he was not a keratoconus patient. Actually, he was just a guy, a amateur athlete, and we took him from 2020, which was already good, and got him down to like superhuman levels of vision, like 2012. So higher aberrations are a thing that affects everybody. So I think it's really going to be for us about trying to push out this technology to as many people as it will benefit, which is a lot of people. So average population, people who need performance vision, police, military.
Me.
Sometimes it's just something that people really care about. Some people like it's a little blurry, whatever.
Yeah.
What people look like that much anyway, or other people who are trying to get the crisp everything. So yeah, it's going to be about pushing the technology out to as many people as possible. There's a lot of interesting technologies that pair well with this. So for example, multifocal lenses. We can layer our higher order aberration on the multifocal lens, get an even better correction for that, or do novel designs for that.
For those of us over 40, for example, I don't know.
So multifocal lenses are
maybe people over 40 start to have vision problems. Presbyopia is a specific one.
Right. Yeah, that's the aging eye, and you can't quite read the book.
Yeah, I have no idea what that means. No idea at all. I've got this sheet of paper here for the questions, and I am holding it out like that so that I can read what we're doing here. So yeah, that's really interesting. That how you guys are in a lot of ways really tied with the direction that this industry may be able to go. Is this?
The vision we see is ultimately higher order aberration correction as a standard of care. That would be the best that we could do ultimately.
Okay.
But there's a lot of work to do.
So how far away do you think it is for it to be a standard practice of care? It's going to be obviously for special treatments first, but
yeah. So we get the biggest benefit with people with special treatments, and the biggest reason for that is the lenses are actually like the best platform for it, the sclera lenses, because they're the most stable lens. So one thing that we didn't really get into is because it's so customized, it really has to stay stuck at the exact same place on your eye. So that's a big reason why we can't just put it in your normal contact lens yet, is because that thing's just floating on your eye and going all over the place. So that's, I think, where a big part of the development will come from.
And that's interesting. That kind of ties in with another company that we had called Ocnatech this past year. And they work with the intraocular lenses that someone, so different application. But yeah, you see that sort of similar thing because that lens ends up in a very specific place.
Right.
Yeah. I guess that's going to be it. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Nick. And for our audience, if you want to follow us along, we're the Forward Faster podcast, and you can find us at nextcore.org. And Nextcore is spelled next, and then CORPS. Remember that S there at the end. So you can also find us on Spotify and iTunes. And to find us there, you look for Nextcore Forward Faster. Thank you very much, and we will see you on the next exciting episode of Forward Faster.